The stars had always been cold, but Elder had never felt their chill so deeply as she did now. She stood at the observation window of the lead ship, her thin gray fingers pressed against the glass. Behind her, the bridge crew worked in silence. There was nothing left to say. They had been running for 3 years. 3 years of fear, 3 years of death, and now, at last, they had nowhere else to go. The fleet drifted through the darkness like wounded animals. 12 ships remained from the original 40. Their hulls were burned and torn. Their engines flickered with failing power. Inside those ships were 12,000, the last of their kind. Everyone else was gone. There was ash. Their colonies were dust. The Dominion of had taken everything. Closed her eyes and remembered the day the Dominion came. She remembered the sky turning red with fire. She remembered the screams of children as the cities burned. She remembered running to the ships with her people, looking back one last time at the world that had been their home for 10,000 years. And then there was nothing. Just the cold emptiness of space and the distant thunder of Dominion warships hunting them across the galaxy. They had begged for help. They had gone to a dozen species, a dozen worlds. They had turned them away in fear of the Dominion. The Syndicate had tried to sell them as slaves. The Assembly of Worlds had given them food and fuel, then told them to leave before they brought trouble. No one wanted the. No one would stand against the Dominion for a dying species with nothing to offer. Now they had come to the edge of the galaxy, to a small yellow star with a blue planet orbiting around it. Earth, it was called, the of a species called humans, knew almost nothing about them. They were young, barely a few centuries into space travel. Their technology was simple compared to the great empires. By all accounts, they were primitive, aggressive, and strange. But they had no other choice. Their fuel was almost gone. Their food supplies would last maybe 2 more weeks. If the humans turned them away, they would die here, drifting in the darkness between stars. The communication officer looked up from his station. His name was, and he was young, too young to remember the. He had been born on the ships, raised in the endless night of space. Elder, we are being approached. A human vessel. Felt her heart's beat faster. Show me. The main screen flickered to life and she saw it. A single ship, small and angular, moving toward them with careful speed. It was nothing like the elegant curves of design or the brutal metal slabs of Dominion warships. It was functional, simple, almost ugly. But there was something about the way it moved that told her the humans were not afraid. A voice came through the speakers. It was rough and direct, speaking through a translator that made the words slightly mechanical. Unknown vessels, this is the USS Horizon Earth Defense Patrol. You look like you've been through hell. Do you need assistance? Stared at the screen. She had expected warnings. She had expected threats. She had expected to be told to leave or be destroyed. Instead, the first thing the humans asked was if they needed help. She did not know what to say. For a long moment, she simply stood there, trying to find the right words. Then she walked slowly to the communication station and activated the channel. This is Elder of the refugee fleet. We are in great need. Our ships are damaged. Our people are starving. We have been running from an enemy that destroyed our world. We have nowhere else to go. She paused and her voice broke slightly. We are asking for refuge. We are asking for mercy. We will accept whatever terms you offer. We have nothing left to give, but we beg you, please do not turn us away. There was silence on the other end, felt her hope dying. She had heard silence before. It was always followed by refusal. Then the human voice came back, and this time it was softer. Hold your position. I'm sending a message to Earth Command. Don't go anywhere, okay? We're going to figure this out. Felt something she had not felt in years. It was small and fragile, but it was there. Hope. The hours passed slowly. The fleet waited in the darkness while messages flew back and forth between the human patrol ship and their. Did not sleep. She could not. She paced the bridge, watching the stars, waiting for the answer that would decide whether her people lived or died. Finally, the communication officer spoke again. Elder, we are receiving a transmission from the human vessel. The screen lit up, and this time there was a face. A human face. The man was older, with tired eyes and gray hair cut short. He wore a uniform of dark blue with symbols did not recognize. Behind him, she could see other humans working at stations. "I'm Captain Jake," the man said. "I've been in contact with Earth. I'm not going to lie to you. There's a lot of people back home who are scared. We've never met aliens before, and you're showing up with a story about some empire that destroys worlds. That's a lot to process." Felt her heart sinking. Here it comes, she thought, the refusal, the polite words telling them to leave. But Captain kept talking. "That said, I've also talked to a lot of people who think we should help you, and personally, I've seen your ships. I've seen the damage. I've seen the scans showing how many children you have on board. Whatever you're running from, it's real, and turning away people who are dying and afraid isn't something I'm willing to do." He leaned forward slightly. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to follow me to a station near Mars. We're going to give you food, fuel, and medical supplies. Then we're going to have a longer conversation about what comes next. It's not a guarantee of anything permanent yet. That's above my pay grade. But for now, you're safe. No one's going to hurt you here." Felt tears running down her face. She did not wipe them away. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you." Captain nodded slowly. "Don't thank me yet. This is just the beginning. But I promise you this, whatever happens next, you're not alone anymore." The fleet followed the human ship toward the inner planets. For the first time in 3 years, allowed herself to breathe. The stars were still cold. The darkness was still vast. But somewhere ahead, in the light of an unfamiliar sun, there were beings who had looked at strangers in need and chosen kindness over fear. Perhaps the universe was not so empty after all. The Great Hall of the United Nations was silent. 212 delegates sat in their seats, watching the stage where the fate of an entire species would be decided. Cameras broadcast the moment to every corner of Earth. Billions of people watched from their homes, their offices, their phones. This was the most important day in human history, and everyone knew it. Elder walked slowly to the podium. She was thin and tired. Her gray skin had lost its color from years of poor food and endless stress. But her eyes were clear, and her voice was steady when she began to speak. "I do not know if you can understand what it means to lose everything," she said. "To watch your world burn, to hold children who will never see their parents again, to bury your friends in the cold space between stars because there is nowhere else to put them." She paused and looked out at the sea of human faces. We are the last of our kind. 10 years ago, we were a proud civilization with beautiful cities and ancient traditions. Then the Dominion of came. They wanted our resources. They wanted our technology. They wanted our people as slaves. When we refused, they destroyed us. The screens behind her showed images that they had brought with them. Cities on fire, ships exploding in space, bodies lying in the streets. The delegates watched in horror as the truth of the Dominion's cruelty was displayed for all to see. "We ran," continued. "We ran for 3 years across the galaxy. We begged for help from every species we met. No one would take us. They were all afraid of the Dominion. They told us to keep moving. They told us we were not their problem." Her voice shook slightly. "And now we have come to you, the last place in the galaxy we could find. We are asking for refuge. We are asking for a chance to live." She bowed her head. "I know we are strangers. I know you have your own problems. I know you are afraid of what might follow us here. But I am begging you, please do not send us away to die. We have nowhere else to go." The hall remained silent for a long moment after she finished. Then the debate began. The arguments lasted for 6 hours. Some delegates were sympathetic. They spoke of compassion and justice and the moral duty to help those in need. Others were afraid. They asked about the Dominion. How powerful were they? Would they come to Earth looking for did humanity have the strength to protect themselves? A general from one of the larger nations stood up. "We are not prepared for a galactic war," he said firmly. "Our fleet is small. Our weapons are primitive by their standards. If we take these refugees, we are painting a target on our entire planet." A delegate from another country shook her head. "So we should let them die. 12,000 people, including children, and we should just close our eyes and pretend we never saw them." "I am not saying we should let them die," the general replied. "I am saying we need to be realistic about the risks." The arguments went back and forth. Some called for a vote immediately. Others wanted more time to study the situation. The tension in the room grew thicker with every passing minute. Then a young woman stood up. Her name was Amy Torres, and she was a delegate from a small coastal nation. She was not powerful. Her country was not rich. But when she spoke, something in her voice made everyone stop and listen. "I have been sitting here for 6 hours," she said, "listening to all of us talk about strategy and resources and military calculations. And I understand why those things matter. I really do. But I think we have forgotten something important." She walked toward the center of the room. "We spent centuries turning away refugees. We let people drown in oceans because it was easier than saving them. We built walls and fences to keep out families who were only looking for a safe place to live. We told ourselves it was necessary. We told ourselves we had no choice." She pointed at the screen, which still showed images of the tragedy. "Now we have a choice that could not be more clear. There are 12,000 people out there in broken ships, waiting to find out if they will live or die. They are not a threat. They are not an army. They are families and children and old people who just want to stop running." Amy Torres looked around the room. "If we turn them away, we are saying that fear matters more than compassion. We are saying that our comfort matters more than their lives. And if that is who we are, then we do not deserve to call ourselves human." She sat down. The room was completely silent. The Secretary General stood slowly. "I believe we have heard enough arguments. It is time to vote. The question before us is simple. Will Earth grant refuge to the people? All those in favor, please indicate now." The lights on the voting board began to change. One by one, the nations of Earth made their choice. Watched from the side of the stage, her hearts pounding so hard she could hear them in her ears. She did not breathe. She did not move. She simply waited. The numbers climbed, 50 in favor, then 100, then 150. A few nations voted against. A handful abstained, but the numbers kept rising. When the final count was displayed, the Secretary General announced the result. 187 nations have voted in favor, 15 have voted against, 10 have abstained. He turned to face Elder. "The motion passes. Earth will grant refuge to the people." The hall erupted in applause. Delegates stood and cheered. Some were crying. Others were hugging each other. On the stage, Elder fell to her knees. The weight of 3 years of fear and pain finally broke through her control, and she wept openly in front of the entire world. Amy Torres walked over to her and knelt beside her. She did not say anything. She simply put her hand on the old woman's shoulder and stayed there while she cried. Outside the United Nations building, crowds had gathered to watch the vote on giant screens. When the result was announced, they erupted in celebration. Strangers hugged each other in the streets. People waved signs that said "Welcome to Earth" in dozens of languages. Children held up drawings of faces with the words "New Friends" written underneath. In orbit above the planet, the fleet received the news. For the first time in 3 years, there was laughter on the ships. Parents held their children and told them they were safe. Young people who had never known anything but fear and running looked at each other with new hope in their eyes. Humanity had made its choice. They would not turn away the desperate. They would not close their doors to the dying. They would face whatever came next together, not just as one species, but as two. And somewhere in the darkness of space, the Dominion began to receive reports about a small blue planet that had done something unexpected. They had said yes. The cold on Titan was unlike anything the human workers had ever experienced. The temperature outside their suits was nearly 200 degrees below zero. Methane rain fell from orange skis onto lakes of liquid gas. It was a dead world, harsh and unforgiving, at the very edge of humanity's reach. And yet, every day, thousands of people put on their suits and went to work. Dr. Ben Carter stood on a ridge overlooking the construction site, watching the massive machines carve into the frozen ground. He was 53 years old, with rough hands and tired eyes. He had spent his entire career building things on Earth: bridges, hospitals, schools. Now he was building something far more important. He was building a home for people who had lost everything. The project had begun 6 months after the United Nations vote. Earth's leaders had debated where to put the colony. Some suggested a remote region of Earth itself. Others proposed the Moon or Mars, but they had asked for something different. They wanted a world they could shape themselves, a place where they could rebuild their culture without feeling like guests in someone else's home. Titan was the answer. It was distant and difficult, but they had once terraformed worlds far more hostile than this. They knew how to build in the cold. They knew how to survive in darkness. And most importantly, Titan would be theirs. Not a borrowed corner of someone else's planet, but a true homeland. Humanity agreed. More than that, humanity offered to help. Volunteers came from every nation on Earth. Engineers, doctors, teachers, construction workers. They signed up by the thousands. Many gave up their careers and their comfortable lives to spend years on a frozen moon, helping strangers they had never met. When people asked them why, the answers were always simple. "Because they need us," said Maria Santos, a structural engineer from South America. "Because if someone burned my home and I had to run, I would want someone to help me too." "Because it is the right thing to do," said old Pete Williams, a retired carpenter who had come out of retirement just for this project. "I have built houses my whole life. This is the most important house I will ever build." Dr. Carter coordinated between the human workers and the architects. At first, communication was difficult. They had their own way of doing things, their own ideas about how buildings should look and function. But slowly, the two groups learned to work together. Human muscle and knowledge combined to create something neither could have built alone. The first rose after 8 months of work. It was enormous, a great glass and metal shell that covered nearly a square kilometer of land. Inside, climate systems pumped warm air and artificial sunlight. Plants began to grow in soil brought from Earth, mixed with seeds that had been carried across the galaxy. Elder was there on the day the dome was finished. She walked through the airlock and stepped inside, feeling warm air on her skin for the first time in years. She looked up at the artificial sun glowing overhead and felt tears running down her face. "It looks like home," she whispered. "It looks like home." More domes followed, a second for housing, a third for schools and gathering places, a fourth for hospitals and medical care, a fifth for farms where they could grow their traditional foods. Each dome was connected to the others by underground tunnels, creating a network of life beneath the frozen surface. Human and workers became friends. They ate together in the break rooms, shared stories about their lives, taught each other words in their languages. The children, who had grown up in the cramped darkness of refugee ships, now played in parks with human children who had come with their parents. One day, a little girl approached Dr. Carter while he was reviewing construction plans. She was small and shy, with wide gray eyes that watched him curiously. "Are you the one who is building our home?" she asked. Carter smiled and knelt down to her level. "I am one of them. There are a lot of us." The girl tilted her head. "Why do you help us? My mother says your world is far away. She says you did not have to come." Carter thought about the question for a moment. "You know what, kid? I do not really have a fancy answer. I just know that when someone needs help, you help them. That is what good people do." The girl nodded slowly as if considering his words. Then she reached into her pocket and pulled out a small stone, smooth and dark. "This is from our old world," she said. "My grandmother gave it to me before she died. She said it would protect me. I want you to have it." Carter hesitated. "I cannot take that. It is too important." "Please," the girl said. "You are building us a new home. I want to give you something too." Carter took the stone gently. It was warm from being in her pocket. He held it carefully, feeling the weight of what it represented. "Thank you," he said. "I will keep it safe." The colony grew quickly after that. Within 2 years, New Velar was a thriving community. 10,000 lived beneath the domes with room for more. They had schools where children learned both history and human science. They had temples where the old traditions were honored. They had farms, hospitals, theaters, and parks. And above it all, the flag of New Velar flew beside the flag of Earth. Two symbols, side by side, representing a friendship that had been forged in the darkness of space. Elder stood before her people on the day the colony was officially opened. Thousands of gathered in the central dome to hear her speak. Beside her stood Dr. Carter and dozens of human workers who had given years of their lives to this project. "We came to this system as refugees," said. "We came broken and afraid, expecting nothing but rejection. Instead, we found something we had lost: hope. The humans did not just give us shelter. They did not just give us food. They gave us back our dignity. They gave us back our future." She turned to look at the humans standing beside her. "We can never repay what you have done for us, but we can promise you this: we will never forget. As long as we exist, we will remember that humanity reached out its hand to strangers in the darkness and said, 'You are welcome here.'" The crowd erupted in applause, and humans embraced. Children ran through the parks, laughing and playing, their voices echoing beneath the dome. Far above, in the cold and silent sky, the orange clouds of Titan drifted slowly over the first true home they had known in years. And in the darkness beyond the solar system, something ancient and terrible turned its attention toward the small blue planet that had dared to show mercy. The Dominion of had found them. The morning began like any other on New Velar. Children walked to school through the underground tunnels. Workers tended the farms and checked the dome systems. Elder was meeting with human engineers to discuss expanding the colony to a second site. Everything was peaceful. Everything was normal. Then the alarms began to scream. Across the solar system, every warning sensor lit up at once. Deep space monitoring stations detected a massive energy surge at the edge of the system. Seconds later, the source became clear. Ships, hundreds of them, pouring out of hyperspace like a swarm of angry insects. The Dominion of had arrived. Admiral Laura was on duty at Earth Command when the reports came in. She was a tall woman with short gray hair and eyes that had seen too many battles. She had commanded Earth's defense fleet for 12 years, protecting humanity from pirates, rogue nations, and asteroid threats. But she had never faced anything like this. "How many ships?" she asked, her voice calm despite the cold fear in her chest. "Over 200 confirmed," her tactical officer replied. "More still coming through. They are forming up on the outer edge of the system." Looked at the holographic display, watching the red dots multiply. 200 ships. Earth's entire combined fleet numbered less than 80. Even with every vessel they had, they were outnumbered nearly 3-1. "Get me a channel to their command ship," she ordered. "Let us see what they want." The communication took several minutes to establish. When the screen finally flickered to life, found herself looking at a face that was not human. The being on the screen was tall and skeletal, with pale gray skin stretched tight over sharp bones. His eyes were black and empty, like holes in the fabric of reality. He wore armor of dark metal, and behind him she could see the bridge of a warship larger than anything humanity had ever built. "I am warlord of the Dominion of," the creature said. His voice was cold and thin, like wind through dead trees. "You are harboring criminals who belong to the Dominion. The species you call are our property. They were marked for collection. They fled before justice could be delivered." kept her face steady. They came to us as refugees. They asked for protection. We gave it to them. Then you have made a grave error, replied. They are not your concern. They are ours. Surrender them to us and your world will be spared. Refuse and we will take them by force, along with everything else you possess. The threat hung in the air like poison gas. Thought about her fleet, her planet, her people. She thought about the 80 ships under her command facing 200. She thought about the cities on Earth, the children in schools, the families who had no idea what was happening out here in the darkness. And then she thought about New Velar. She thought about the children playing in the parks. She thought about Elder, who had wept with relief when humanity said yes. She thought about Dr. Carter and the thousands of workers who had given years of their lives to build a home for strangers. Let me make sure I understand, said slowly. You destroyed you killed billions of their people. You chased the survivors across the galaxy for 3 years. And now you expect us to just hand them over so you can finish the job. His black eyes showed no emotion. They are property, they have no rights. This is not your concern. Leaned forward slightly. You are wrong. They are under our protection now. That makes it very much our concern. You cannot defeat us, said. Your fleet is small. Your weapons are primitive. If you resist, you will die. Maybe, replied, but we will not let you take them without a fight. Stared at her for a long moment. Then his thin lips twisted into something that might have been a smile. Foolish. Your species is young and ignorant. You do not understand what you are facing. The Dominion has destroyed 1,000 worlds. We have ended civilizations older than your entire species. You are nothing to us. Smiled back and there was no warmth in it. Then I guess you have nothing to worry about. Come and take them if you think you can. She cut the transmission. On New Velar, Elder was watching the news feed with growing horror. The Dominion had found them. The nightmare she had feared for 3 years was finally here. She turned to the human officials beside her, her old eyes filled with anguish. You must let us go, she said. We will take our ships and lead them away from your system. Perhaps they will follow us and leave you in peace. The human official, a young woman named Lisa Park who coordinated between Earth and the colony, shook her head firmly. That is not going to happen. You do not understand, pleaded. The Dominion will destroy your world. They will kill billions of your people. We are not worth that. We are only 12,000. Your world has 8 billion lives. You cannot sacrifice them for us. Lisa took the old woman's hands gently. Elder, we knew this might happen. We knew there might be consequences for taking you in. We chose to do it anyway. That choice was not conditional. It was not a loan we expected you to repay. It was a promise. But your people will die, whispered. Some of them might, Lisa admitted. And that is terrible. But if we hand you over to those monsters, we stop being the people we want to be. We stop being human. Admiral's voice came through on the colony's speakers, broadcast to every dome and every ship in the system. She was addressing not just the fleet, but all of humanity. This is Admiral Laura. By now you have all seen the reports. An alien fleet has entered our solar system and demanded that we surrender the people. They have threatened to destroy us if we refuse. She paused for a moment. I want to be clear about something. We are outnumbered. By any tactical calculation, we should not be able to win this fight. But I want you to understand what it would mean if we gave in. It would mean telling the universe that human compassion has a price. It would mean that our promises mean nothing. It would mean that anyone who comes to us for help should not trust us, because we will abandon them when things get difficult. Her voice hardened. That is not who we are. They came to us broken and afraid, and we gave them our word that they would be safe here. I am not going to break that word. I am not going to let those monsters take a single child while I have ships that can fight. She took a breath. All fleet units, this is a general order. Move to defensive positions. Prepare for combat. We are going to hold the line. Across the solar system, humanity's fleet began to move. 80 ships against 200. Old vessels and new ones, armed with weapons that seemed like toys compared to the Dominion's technology. Their crews knew the odds. They knew many of them would not survive, but not one ship turned away. On the bridge of the command ship USS Aurora, Admiral looked at the holographic display and watched the enemy fleet advancing. She thought about her family on Earth, her friends who served beside her, the young officers who had their whole lives ahead of them. "All hands," she said quietly, "this is the fight of our lives. Let us make it count." Battle of Saul began at dawn on Earth, though in the darkness of space there was no dawn, only the cold light of distant stars and the glow of weapons charging across 280 ships. Admiral Laura stood on the bridge of the USS Aurora, watching the Dominion fleet advance like a wall of death. Her tactical display showed 80 blue dots facing 212 red ones. The numbers were terrible. By every logical calculation, this battle should already be over. But humans had never been good at following calculations. "All ships, this is Aurora Command," said into the fleet channel. "They are coming in fast. Do not wait for them to get close. Hit them with everything you have from maximum range. Make them pay for every kilometer they advance." The human fleet opened fire. Missiles streaked across the void. Energy weapons lit up the darkness. The first Dominion ships took hits and their shields flared bright, absorbing the damage. But humanity did not stop firing. Wave after wave of weapons slammed into the enemy formation. The Dominion returned fire. Their weapons were more powerful, their ships more advanced. The human destroyer USS Grant was the first to fall, torn apart by a concentrated barrage from 3 enemy cruisers. Its crew of 42 had no time to escape. But as the Grant died, 2 more human ships moved into its place. They did not retreat. They did not hesitate. They just kept fighting. Captain Danny Reeves commanded the USS Sentinel, an old destroyer that had been scheduled for retirement before the war began. His ship was battered but Reeves had been in the Navy for 30 years. He knew how to fight with what he had. "Helm, bring us alongside that dreadnought," he ordered, pointing at one of the massive Dominion capital ships. "Get as close as you can." His first officer looked at him with wide eyes. "Sir, that ship is 10 times our size. If we get close, they will destroy us." "They are going to destroy us anyway," Reeves replied calmly. "But if we get close enough, we can take them with us." The Sentinel charged forward, weaving between enemy fire. Smaller Dominion ships tried to intercept, but Reeves pushed his engines past their limits, burning through space like a comet. Weapons fire tore chunks from his hull. Systems failed one by one. Crew members died at their stations. But the Sentinel reached the dreadnought. Reeves aimed his ship at the massive vessel's main reactor section, the one vulnerable point in its design. At the last moment, he gave one final order. "All hands abandon ship, everyone to the escape pods, now." Half the crew made it out. The other half stayed at their posts, either unable to reach the pods or choosing to remain with their captain. Reeves was among them. The Sentinel struck the dreadnought at full speed. The impact tore through armor and bulkheads, breaching the reactor core. Both ships exploded in a blinding flash of light that was visible from Earth. One human destroyer had killed a Dominion dreadnought. Across the battlefield, other human crews saw what Reeves had done. Instead of losing hope, they fought harder. If one old ship could take down a dreadnought, then anything was possible. Lieutenant Holt led a squadron of 12 fighters through the chaos. She was 24 years old, fresh from the academy, and had never been in real combat before today. But she flew like she had been born in a cockpit, weaving through enemy fire with impossible precision. "All wings, follow me," she called to her squadron. "We are going for the cruisers in the center. Hit their engines and weapons arrays. Make them blind and slow." Her fighters dove into the heart of the Dominion formation. They were tiny compared to the enemy ships, insects attacking giants. But insects could sting. Squadron disabled 3 cruisers in 15 minutes, their precision strikes finding weak points that the larger human ships could then exploit. One by one, her squadron was picked off. Pilots she had trained with, laughed with, called friends. They died around her as the enemy closed in. By the end, only and 2 others remained. "Lieutenant, we need to pull back," one of her wingmen called. "We are almost out of missiles." Looked at her display. A 4th cruiser was ahead, its shields already weakened by earlier attacks. If she could finish it off, it would open a gap in the enemy line. "One more run," she said, "then we go home." They made their attack. The cruiser's shields collapsed, its weapons went silent. But as turned to retreat, a Dominion fighter caught her from behind. Her ship spun out of control, systems failing, cockpit filling with smoke. "Eject, Lieutenant," her wingman screamed. Hit the ejection button. Her seat rocketed away from the dying fighter just as it exploded. She drifted in the darkness, watching the battle continue around her, hoping someone would find her before her air ran out. The battle raged for 9 hours. Humanity lost 43 ships. Over 8,000 sailors and soldiers died in the cold void of space. Fathers, mothers, sons, daughters, they gave everything they had to hold the line. But they held it. When the sun rose over Earth the next morning, the Dominion fleet was broken. Warlord's flagship drifted powerless, its bridge destroyed by a direct hit from the Aurora's main cannon. The surviving enemy ships were fleeing toward the edge of the system, their formation shattered, their confidence destroyed. Admiral leaned against her command chair, exhausted beyond words. Her ship was barely holding together. Half her bridge crew was dead, but she was still alive, and so was the fleet. "Send a message to Earth Command," she said quietly. "The battle is over, we have won." On Titan, they had watched the battle on every screen available. They had seen the human ships charging into impossible odds. They had seen crew after crew sacrifice themselves to protect strangers they had never met. They had seen humanity bleed for them. Elder stood in the central dome of New Valor, surrounded by her people. When word came that the Dominion had been defeated, no one cheered. The price had been too high for celebration. Instead, they wept. They wept for the humans who had died. They wept with relief that the nightmare was finally over. They wept because they finally understood what humanity had given them. 3 months later, a monument was built on Titan. It stood in the center of New Velar, a tall pillar of white stone with the names of every human who had died in the Battle of Saul carved into its surface. Over 8,000 names, each one a life given for people they had never known. Visited the monument every day. She would stand before it in silence, reading the names, remembering the faces she had seen on the news feeds during the battle. Captain Danny Reeves, Lieutenant Holt, thousands of others whose stories she would never know. One day, a young child found her there. It was the same girl who had given Dr. Carter the stone from her, now a few years older and still curious. "Elder," the girl asked, "why did the humans do this for us? They did not know us. We had nothing to offer them. Why did they die for us?" Looked at the monument for a long time before answering. "Because that is who they are," she said finally. "Humans do not measure the worth of a life by what it can offer. They measure it simply by the fact that it exists. They saw us suffering and they could not look away. They heard us begging for help and they could not say no. They are a young species, wild and strange and sometimes foolish, but they have something that older species have forgotten." "What is that?" the girl asked. Hope said, "They look at the universe and see not what is, but what could be. They believe that things can be better, and they are willing to fight for that belief, even when it costs them everything." She placed her hand on the girl's shoulder. "We asked them for refuge. They built us a home. We asked them for safety. They guarded us with warships and their own lives. We can never repay that debt, but we can honor it. We can live the way they taught us to live, with courage, with kindness, and with hope." Above them, through the transparent dome, The stars shone cold and bright. Somewhere out there, human warships still patrolled the edges of the solar system, standing guard over the species they had adopted as their own. The universe was vast and dark and full of terrors. But in one small corner of it, two species had found each other in the darkness and chosen to be family. And that was enough.